9 killed, thousands wounded in pager blasts across Lebanon. And Australian police infiltrate secret crime app. Hello and good afternoon. Salam Malaysia Madani. Thanks for joining us. I'm Brendan Lepal and you're watching World Today. At least 9 people were killed while some 2,800 were wounded when hundreds of pagers used by Hezbollah members exploded across Lebanon. The group has blamed Israel as being responsible for the blasts. According to Lebanese Health Minister Firas Abiyat, the blasts killed 9 people, including a girl. Some 2,800 people were injured, about 200 of them critically, with injuries mostly reported to the face, hands and stomach. Iranian state media reported Tehran's ambassador in Beirut was wounded in a pager explosion, but his injuries were not serious. Hezbollah blamed Israel for the blasts and warned it would be punished. The United States, Israel's top arms provider and close ally, said it was not involved and not aware of this incident in advance. Analysts said Israeli intelligence services had somehow managed to infiltrate the supply chain used by Hezbollah for its pagers. A source close to Hezbollah told AFP that the pagers that exploded concerned a shipment recently imported by Hezbollah of 1,000 devices which appear to have been sabotaged at source. UN member states were set to vote Wednesday on a push by the Palestinians to formally demand an end to the Israeli occupation of the Palestinian territories within 12 months. The non-binding text, which Israel says will fuel violence if adopted, is based on an advisory opinion from the International Court of Justice calling Israel's occupation since 1967 unlawful. In response, Arab countries call for a special session of the Assembly just days before dozens of heads of states and government meet at the UN headquarters to address the kickoff of this year's General Assembly session. The draft resolution demands that Israel brings to an end without delay its unlawful presence in the occupied Palestinian territory and that this be done no later than 12 months from the adoption. Israel firmly rejected the resolution on Tuesday. U.S. Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield condemned the draft resolution as inflammatory and said it is not going to advance the cause of peace. While the Security Council is largely paralyzed on the Gaza issue, with the United States repeatedly vetoing censures of its ally Israel, the General Assembly has adopted several texts in support of Palestinian civilians amid the current war. Unlike in the Security Council, no country in the General Assembly has veto power. Top Russian security official Sergei Shoigu met President Masoud Pezeshkian in Tehran following his recent meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in Pyongyang. Shoigu also held talks with his Iranian counterpart Ali Akbar Ahmadian during his visit. Russia has deepened ties with Iran and North Korea, both of which are hostile to the United States since the start of its war in Ukraine. The United States views the growing relationships with concern and says both countries are supplying Russia with ballistic missiles for use in the conflict, something Moscow denies. Shoigu's visit come at a critical juncture in the ongoing 2.5-year conflict as Ukraine pushes the United States and its allies to provide long-range weapons to strike targets deep within Russian territory. Shoigu was Russian defense minister until May, when he was appointed secretary of the Security Council that brings together President Vladimir Putin's military and intelligence chiefs and other senior officials. Apart from meeting North Korea's Kim last week, he also held talks in St. Petersburg with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi. North Korea fired a salvo of short-range ballistic missiles early Wednesday, Pyongyang's second such weapons test in a week. Leader Kim Jong-un's regime has staged dozens of launches this year, part of a testing spree that experts say could be linked to North Korea's alleged illicit supplying of weapons to ally Russia for use in Ukraine. Pyongyang has denied any sanctions busting weapons trade with Russia, but with diplomacy long stalled, it declared South Korea its principal enemy this year and recently moved nuclear-capable weapons to border areas. Seoul's Joint Chiefs of Staff JCS said it had detected and was analyzing several short-range ballistic missiles launched to the northeast around 6:50 a.m. Tokyo also confirmed the launch, with the country's Coast Guard saying one missile had splashed down already. Last Thursday, the North fired what Seoul described as multiple short-range ballistic missiles into waters east of the Korean peninsula, the nuclear-armed country's first major weapons test since early July. North Korean state media later claimed that this had been a test of a new type 600mm multiple rocket launcher, which was overseen by Kim. Mali said its capital, Bamako, was under control after insurgents attacked a gendarmerie training school and other areas before dawn, firing gunshots that reverberated around the city. Al-Qaeda affiliate claimed responsibility for the attack. The pre-dawn attacks on strategic points in Bamako were a rare case of unrest, reaching the capital after years of armed conflict in the hinterlands between government forces and rebels. Army Chief General Omar Diarra visited the school in the aftermath and told journalists the complex attack was now under control and fighters who infiltrated had been neutralized. The report on state television showed around a dozen blindfolded men rounded up on the floor. The footage also showed two blurred-out bodies, one in military fatigues and one in civilian clothing. A 32-year-old computer geek from Australia was arrested today on suspicion of being the mastermind behind an encrypted messaging app used by criminals worldwide to facilitate drug deals and order killings. Australian Federal Police said the app, known as Ghost, was marketed as unhackable and was used by hundreds of suspected criminals from Italy, the Middle East, and Asia. But unbeknownst to users, global policing authorities had hacked the network and were watching as the criminal discussed trafficking illicit drugs, money laundering, homicides and serious violence. Authorities finally made their move on Tuesday and Wednesday, arresting criminals from Italy, Ireland, Sweden, Canada and Australia, including the 32-year-old mastermind of the app. The Ghost app, a kind of WhatsApp for criminals, was created 9 years ago and could only be accessed via modified smartphones that sold for about 2,000 Australian dollars. French gendarmerie traced the creator's location to Australia and joined forces with local police to target the platform. For 2 years, authorities watched as Ghost became more popular and criminals exchanged messages, including 50 threats of life, which Australian police said they were able to thwart. And coming up next, rapper Sean Diddy denied bail after arrest on sex trafficking charge. Stay with us. Superstar rap mogul Sean Diddy Combs pleaded not guilty to racketeering and sex trafficking charges and was ordered to remain in custody pending a trial. Combs, 54, was arrested by federal agents in New York on Monday evening and accused in a just unsealed 3-count criminal indictment, alleging he sexually abused women and coerced them into drug-fueled sex parties using threats and violence. Appearing in Manhattan courtroom where many family members came to support him, the one-time music dignitary pleaded not guilty. Judge Robin Tarnowski denied bail for Combs. Along with racketeering conspiracy and sex trafficking, Combs is charged with 1 count of transporting victims across state lines to engage in prostitution. Damian Williams, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, said that although Combs is the only person indicted for now, the investigation is ongoing. In other news, traders on Tuesday kept bets that the United States Federal Reserve will start an expected series of interest rate cuts with a 0.5 percentage point move downward on Wednesday, an expectation that may itself put pressure on central bankers to deliver just that. Futures tied to the Fed policy rate implied about 2 in 3 chance of a bigger cut versus a 1 in 3 chance of the more moderate 25 basis points reduction, still penciled in by analysts at most major Wall Street firms. Traders expect a total of 2 half-point rate cuts plus 1 quarter-point cut over the course of the 3 remaining meetings for 2024. The Fed has kept its policy rate in the 5.25% to 5.5% range for more than a year as it seeks to squeeze high inflation from the economy. Inflation in the United States is now down to 2.5%, and most policymakers view it as moving on track toward the Fed's 2% target. Meanwhile, the unemployment rate rose to 4.2% last month. Nearly all Fed policymakers agreed even in July that it would soon be time to start cutting rates to avoid slowing the economy too much. A United States Senate bill aimed at enshrining federal protections and expanding insurance coverage for fertility treatments failed as Republicans voted against it days after Donald Trump surprised supporters by voicing support for such a policy. The bill failed 51 to 44, falling short of the required 60-vote threshold after most Republicans voted against it for the second time. Democrats controlled the chamber by a slim 51 to 49 margin. The bill's sponsor, Democratic Senator Tammy Duckworth, first attempted to get a vote on the same bill in late February after the Alabama Supreme Court ruled the embryos used in vitro fertilization, or IVF, should be considered children, jeopardizing access to the treatment used by millions of Americans every year. Republican presidential candidate Trump said in August he would require the government or insurance companies to pay for IVF if he is elected. This came as a surprise for some hardline Republicans who see the treatment as controversial. Ecuador's military began supporting operations at a major dam following the government's decision to implement a series of 8-hour nightly power cuts across the Andean country next week amid a severe drought which has caused water levels to plunge, affecting hydroelectric plants. Ecuador is in the grip of power crisis, which the government attributes to a lack of maintenance of existing dams and contracts to secure new power generation, as well as the country's worst drought in the last 61 years. Power cuts will begin on Monday next week and will last until 6 a.m. the next day. The measure will be repeated on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday. Ecuadorian military said personnel entered the Mazar Dam, which supplies some 170 megawatts of power and has a large storage capacity to protect the plant and support its operation. About 50 soldiers with technical knowledge will be trained to operate the country's hydroelectric system, the Defense Ministry said in a statement, without confirming how long soldiers will man the dams. 3 firefighters died in Portugal on Tuesday as they headed to battle a blaze as wildfires rage in the central and northern part of the country. Local media reported this takes the death toll due to the wildfires to a total of 7. Furthermore, over 40 have been injured as authorities evacuated more villages overnight. The government has requested help from the European Commission under the EU Civil Protection Mechanism, leading Spain, Italy and Greece to send 2 water-bombing aircraft each. There were 48 active wildfires in mainland Portugal, mobilizing around 5,000 firefighters. In Aveiro alone, the blazes have burned through more than 10,000 hectares of forests and scrubland in the past 2 days, roughly the same as those consumed by fires through the end of August in the entire country. National Emergency and Civil Protection said the Aveiro fires could engulf a further 20,000 hectares. SpaceX successfully launched its Falcon 9 rocket carrying the European Commission's Galileo L-13 mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. According to SpaceX, now this marks the 22nd flight for this Falcon 9 first-stage booster.
Ignition.
The Galileo satellites, part of the mission, are managed and operated by the European Union Agency for the Space Programme on behalf of the EU. The Galileo constellation, Europe's equivalent to the United States Global Positioning System (GPS), resides at an altitude of 23,222 kilometers. 32 Galileo satellites have now launched to date, with all but 4 of them atop Russian-built Soyuz rockets or Europe's Ariane 5 heavy lifter. The European Union has struck a tentative deal to launch 4 Galileo navigation satellites using Falcon 9 rockets of US-based SpaceX in the latest sign of pressure caused by a gap in European launch capacity. According to EU Internal Market Commissioner Thierry Breton, the provisional contract with SpaceX was worth 180 million euros, equivalent to 191.99 million US dollars. The Facebook and Instagram accounts of Russian state media networks RT and RIA Novosti were seen to be unavailable on Tuesday after Meta said it was banning Russian state media networks from its platforms, claiming the outlets had used deceptive tactics to carry out covert influence operations online. In a news bulletin, RT newsreader Yunan O'Neill said the broadcaster and Russia as a whole denies the accusations that have been coming en masse against this channel and others in the past number of days. The Russian embassy did not immediately respond to a Reuters request for comment. The White House declined to comment. The ban marks a sharp escalation in actions by the world's biggest social media company against Russian state media after it spent years taking more limited steps such as blocking the outlets from running ads and reducing the reach of their posts. Meta's move came after the United States filed money laundering charges earlier this month against 2 RT employees for what officials said was a scheme to hire an American company to produce online content to influence the 2024 election. Workers gathered at a makeshift tent near a Samsung electronics plant in India and called on police to withdraw cases against workers detained for planning a protest march without permission. Most of the 104 detained workers had already been released by Indian police late on Monday, except for 3. The detention marked an escalation of a strike by workers at the Samsung home appliance plant near Chennai in the state of Tamil Nadu. Workers who want higher wages have since 9 September stopped work at the plant that contributes roughly a third of Samsung's annual India revenue of $12 billion. A fire broke out inside Greece's second biggest oil refinery, forcing workers to evacuate as a column of black smoke poured across the evening sky. Video shot by Reuters showed the raging fire being tackled by firefighters at the refinery run by Greek company Motor Oil, about 70 kilometers west of Athens. Fire crews sent 3 helicopters and 11 fire engines to the scene. A company official said no one was injured in the fire and a general message was sent to residents to evacuate the area. Local authorities closed the highway near the refinery and the rail company said trains had been halted. And in sports, Bayern hit 9. Real Madrid and Liverpool win as new Champions League kicks off. Stay with us. But first, national weightlifter Mohammad Anik Kasdan created a sensation when he not only won the men's 61-kilogram gold but also broke his own national record at the 2024 Commonwealth Weightlifting Championships in Suva, Fiji. In the championship that took place at the Vodafone Arena, Mohammad Anik succeeded in lifting a total weight of 298 kilograms, surpassing the national record of 297 kilograms that he had set when finishing 4th at the Paris 2024 Olympic Games last month. The silver medal was won by Moreya Baru from Papua New Guinea, while the bronze went to Mohammad Anik's teammate Mohammad Amin Hakimi Mohammad Shukri. Meanwhile, another weightlifter from the country, Mohammad Rahimi Sulaiman, also had a successful outing in the championships when he clinched the men's 55-kilogram gold with an overall lift of 228 kilograms, beating his rival A. Maharajan from India for the silver, while another Indian, Dabulal Hembrom, took the bronze. And let's move on to football. Bayern Munich became the first team to score 9 goals in a game in the modern Champions League as the new format of Europe's elite club competition kicked off on Tuesday. Title holders Real Madrid and Liverpool were also among the winners. Harry Kane scored 4 goals, including 3 penalties, as Bayern hammered Croatian champions Dinamo Zagreb 9-2 at the Allianz Arena. Michael Olise scored twice on his Champions League debut, while Rafael Guerreiro, Leroy Sané and Leon Goretzka were also on target for the home team in Germany. Dinamo were 3-0 down at the break but scored twice in 2 minutes just after half-time to give the hosts a scare, with Bruno Petkovic and Takuya Ogiwara on target. But Bayern then scored 6 times from the 57th minute onwards. It was a remarkable way to mark the opening night of the brand new Champions League, with the competition now featuring 36 teams all pooled together in one giant league instead of the old group stage. UEFA European Football's governing body introduced the new format to ward off the threats of a breakaway Super League by the biggest clubs, but it also hopes the changes will breathe new life into the competition. At the Santiago Bernabeu, reigning champions Madrid made to work hard before beating VfB Stuttgart 3-1. Kylian Mbappe marked his first game in the competition with Real by scoring the opening goal just after halftime. Antonio Rudiger hit it home in the 83rd minute for the record 50-time champions after Dennis Undav had leveled Mbappe's opener just second into the second half. Endrick, another Champions League debutant, wrapped up Madrid's win with a low drive in stoppage time. Stuttgart had the better of an entertaining opening period, but Carlo Ancelotti's team have a habit of grinding out victories when up against the wall, and they took the 3 points despite the visitors' impressive efforts. Meanwhile, Liverpool marked their return to Europe's top table by coming from behind to win 3-1 away to 7-time champions AC Milan in Italy. Christian Pulisic gave Milan an early lead, but Ibrahima Konate equalised and Virgil van Dijk headed the away side in front before the interval. Dominic Szoboszlai then wrapped up the victory for Liverpool at San Siro. Liverpool and Milan have been crowned continental kings 13 times and have beaten each other in Champions League finals, but the Reds were a class above and would have won by more had the woodwork not twice denied Mohamed Salah in the first half. Disappointed Milan fans began streaming towards the exit long before the final whistle, after which a deluge of whistles and boos met a thoroughly deserved defeat. Aston Villa made a stylish return to the Champions League with a 3-0 win at Swiss side Young Boys in their first game in the tournament for 41 years. Villa boss Unai Emery had urged his team to take 3 points in Bern as a tribute to the club's former striker Gary Shaw, who died on Monday aged 63 after being injured in a fall. Clad in the number 8 shirt that Shaw made his own at Villa, it was fitting that Yuri Tillemans opened the scoring against Young Boys and celebrated by pointing to his jersey. Jacob Ramsey bagged Villa's second goal before the interval, and Amadou Onana added the third in the closing stages as Emery's men eased to a victory 4 decades in the making. Villa are back in the Champions League after surprisingly finishing 4th in the Premier League last term. And in tennis, Emma Raducanu got her career Open campaign off to a winning start with a hard-fought 7-6, 7-6 victory over American Peyton Stearns. Britain's Raducanu is looking to make an impact in Seoul after a string of last-minute withdrawals, including world number 1 Iga Swiatek, US Open runner-up Jessica Pegula, and former Wimbledon champion Elena Rybakina. The 2021 US Open champion Raducanu, ranked 70th in the world, had to dig deep to beat her 48th ranked opponent in steamy conditions in a match that lasted 2 hours and 43 minutes. Raducanu, who has failed to build on her stunning US Open success, stormed into a 4-1 first set lead, but let her opponent come back before edging her in the tiebreak. Raducanu struggled to shake off Stearns in the second set and could not finish the job when serving for the match at 5-3. She had to battle some more to take the second set to a tiebreak, but then rode a late surge of momentum to clinch the match in straight sets. Raducanu's next opponent will be China's Yue Yuan, the 8th seed.
Perlawanan bola sepak Liga Super 2024 terus memburu ruang bagi mendominasi perlawanan. Aksi-aksi dan asakan terus diledakkan, menggegar setiap pertempuran. Jumaat 20 September, Kedah Darul Aman FC bertemu Seri Pahang FC 8.30 malam di saluran OK. Saksikan juga secara penstriman langsung di RTM Klik.
Pameran Pertanian, Hortikultur dan Agropelancongan Malaysia MAHA kembali. Lokasinya bertempat di Maib, Serdang. Anda pasti akan teruja datang kemari kerana pameran ini menonjolkan kehebatan teknologi digunakan dalam pembangunan sektor pertanian dan bidang-bidang berkaitan. Malah, anda boleh sertai ratusan aktiviti dijalankan sepanjang penganjuran MAHA. Apa yang lebih menarik, Selamat Pagi Malaysia juga akan bersiaran pada Khamis, 19 September 2024 bermula jam 8 pagi sehingga 10 pagi. Jumpa anda di sana.
And that wraps up this edition of World Today. In our top story, 9 killed, thousands wounded in pager blasts across Lebanon. Join us again tonight at 8:30 p.m. on saluran Berita RTM and TV1 for your news updates. You can also stream us online through RTM's Click app. Till then, I'm Brenda Paul, Malaysia Madani. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Take care.